position today, most commonly found in yoga class, called downward dog position. And break it down in terms of like how it's supposed to feel, what are the cues, how to get yourself into this position in the most effective way possible. And then we'll work on opening up the hip a little bit in downward dog and flipping over the dog into a like rock star wild thing pose, just to get a little bit more upper back opening. So let's go ahead and break down the downward dog pose. So basically, you're going to start, best way to get into this is from like a hands and knees pose, where your hands are right under your shoulders, toes are tucked under, and basically you're going to press up your hips to the ceiling and head through. Now, in this position, the cues that I want you to think about, so we'll kind of break them down one at a time. So let's first start thinking about the head and the neck. So you're going to try to relax your head, your neck down to the ground. Try to release any of the tension up in your shoulders, neck, and just kind of let it hang loose. Now I want you to take your elbows, rotate them down so they're pointing towards the ground. Drive that L shape between your index finger and thumb. Drive those towards each other. Dig them into the ground as you drive your elbows. Rotate your elbows underneath. And I want you to take your shoulder blades and kind of bring them down your back, so kind of back up in that direction. So down your back, and drive, again, your index finger, thumb into the ground, rotate your elbows, and try to, again, keep your neck heavy so you don't want to tense up your shoulders too much, and just widen your back just a little bit. Now, talking about the hips. So as you work your heels towards the ground, I want you to think about taking the crease of your hips and raising it as tall as you can to the ceiling, and taking the backs of your thighs, pushing them away from you. So backs of the thighs, push them away, and slightly rotate your thighs inwards. Okay? So you're getting an internal rotation with your legs and your knees, pushing the backs of your hamstrings towards the ceiling, taking your hip crease, and then trying to reach that tailbone as high as you possibly can, toning the thighs, and remembering to dig through the hands, so pointer finger, thumbs, and driving those elbows. So there's a really good kind of nice external rotation happening in the arms, and then a little bit of an internal rotationing happening in the crease of the hips. And eventually you'll work your heels down towards the ground. You may start with your heels a little bit off, but eventually you're going to push them. So keep driving the backs of your knees and the hamstrings up towards the ceiling. So this is just a really good pose to kind of settle in, and eventually after a while you're really going to start to feel it in the shoulders, a little bit even in the hips and the legs and the hamstrings, but that's really how you're supposed to feel in this downward dog position. It's really a nice kind of shoulder opener, hamstring opener. So let's work on a little bit of the hips now. So you're going to take one leg and you're going to raise it up overhead. Now when you do this, the tendency is to open the hips up to the side. So you want to actually try to keep those hips for now square, and especially your shoulders square. So you actually want to think about, if we're raising the left leg first, so if the left leg is going first, you actually want to think about making sure that the right shoulder is actually higher than the left shoulder. So if you think about that, you're going to square your shoulders off as you raise your leg, and then go ahead, bend the knee, and open up the hip, and feel some space between the ribs and the sides of your hips. So you're just going to open up the hip and try to stack them as you bring that knee up to the side. Now again, this left shoulder is going to want to open up, so you want to rotate that down. Try to get your right armpit higher than your left armpit as you open the hips up, and really try to find that space between the ribs and your hip bone on that side. You can do some wide circles. Thinking about driving the knee away from the crown of your head. So you want to drive the crown of your head towards the ground and drive that left hip point away as you do these circles. Again, really focusing on getting those shoulders square. And now what we're going to do is shift our weight over, bring our heel to the ground, and come over into a flipped dog position. So this is a really nice shoulder opener. So get those hips driven to the ceiling, drive through those heels, bring your hands overhead, and then you want to kind of externally rotate that shoulder, drive the index finger and the thumb into the ground, and really try to raise that chest and heart towards the ceiling. We'll flip it back on over, left leg back in the air, everything nice and squared off, and then we'll take the right leg now
and up into the air. So right leg up into the air. And again, as you want to try to keep your hips square, try not to open them up right now. So everything's squared off. Now you're going to bend the knee, try to stack the hips, but try to raise that left armpit so it's higher than the right armpit, or level 2. So that your shoulders stay square, but your hips are going to open up to the side. And then you can do some big circles. So you're going to feel, let me turn this way. So as you're up here, you're going to feel a lot of space opening up between your rib and your hip point. So I want you to feel that space opening up as your knee is bent and you're doing some nice long circles. Try to get your right armpit lower than your left armpit, so square off the shoulders. Get some circles in both directions. And then we're going to shift our weight over, rotate that foot, land on both heels, flip the dog, so you want to rotate this shoulder to the outside, drive through the index and thumb, that L shape of your hand, and then raise that arm up to the ceiling. Try to push your heart and chest and hips as high as you can up to that ceiling. Again, another really great thoracic opener. All this just from coming from that downward dog position. We'll flip it back on over, leg up, and then heels right back down. And then one more time, just to focus on those cues. So you want to rotate those elbows down towards the ground. Feel like there's a block in between your forearms and you're driving them together. Take those L shapes, the index finger to the thumb, dig that into the ground and drive that L, the L's of your hands towards each other. Keep the neck heavy and the head relaxed. Widen the shoulder blades and then bring the shoulder blades kind of up and down towards your back. Reach your tailbone to the ceiling, drive the backs of your knees and your hamstrings back towards the wall behind you. Rotate the thighs inward, so a little bit of an internal rotation. So take the knees and turn them in slightly towards each other. And then take the crease of your hips and try to raise it as high as you can. So feel the inner groin area. So raise them as high as you can up towards the ceiling, the crease of your hips. And drive your knees towards the ground, or your heels, towards the ground. So I hope you guys can spend some time in that downward dog and some flip dog position today. It's really nice to kind of get that inversion. Really great pose. I love getting into it all the time. I try to do one every day. Just a really nice way to kind of get the blood flowing, work on some strength in the arms, work on a little bit more of like a postural alignment.